Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good evening to viewers in Malaysia, and good morning to in the West, in Europe and America. Uh, we all know. My name is Nazar Ismail. I'm the director of Hashim Sani Center for Palestine Studies at the University of Malaya. Uh, sorry, Mustafa, there's an echo going on. It's disturbing my talk. Can you please do something about it, because there's an echo coming out. Okay. We all know that the Zionists committed ethnic cleansing in Gaza since even before the illegal state of Israel was declared in 1948. And we also know that during the Nakba of 1948, hundreds of Palestinian villages were razed and destroyed, and thousands of Palestinians were killed, and more than 750,000 Palestinians became refugees. But during that very tragic episode, the world didn't do anything, because you can see that many were not aware. They were unaware of the crimes committed against Palestinians. But now, today, nobody can claim to be unaware that more than 34,000 Palestinians in Gaza have been murdered by the Zionists since early October, and 70% of them were women and children. Thousands others are murdered, are buried under the rubble. Hundreds of thousands have been injured, and more than a million have been displaced and have become refugees in their own country. But why is the world not doing anything? Why is the world allowing this to happen? Why are the Arab countries, which have so much money, not doing anything to help the Palestinians? Why are countries like Jordan, Egypt, Turkey, Morocco still maintaining diplomatic relations with Israel? And can we rely on these countries or the OIC to help the Palestinians? So to answer these questions, we have invited a renowned expert on the Middle East to our program today, and he is Dr. AZZAM Tamimi. Welcome, Dr. AZZAM, and thank you for accepting our invitation.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah, but before we start, let me share some information about Dr. AZZAM with the audience. Dr. AZZAM Tamimi is a British Palestinian writer, analyst, and commentator. He obtained his doctorate in political philosophy from the University of Westminster in London in 1998. Until 2008, he was the director of the London-based Institute of Islamic Political Thought. From September 2000 to 30th March 2004, he was a senior lecturer at the Montpellier Institute of Higher Education in Leicestershire, UK. Between 2004 and 2006, he was a visiting professor at Kyoto and Nagoya universities in Japan. In 2006, he co-founded the London-based Al-Hiwar Arabic satellite TV channel, and he writes and lectures on issues related to Islamic political thought and Middle Eastern politics. He has written 4 books, more than 4 books actually, but the 4 that are very famous are The Power Sharing Islam, published by Liberty in 1993, Islam and Secularism in the Middle East, Rashid Banushi, the Democratic Islamism, published in 2001, and Hamas, entitled Hamas Unwritten Chapters, published in 2006. So, my question to Dr. AZZAM, recently, as we know, last month actually, towards the end of last month, 19th March, the United Nations Security Council passed a resolution that demands Israel to implement a ceasefire. The US abstained and said that the resolution was not binding. And now we see that Israel continues to kill Palestinians, including aid workers. They are also announcing that they are going to attack Rafah. Now they are making a public announcement to the world they are going to attack Rafah, despite the resolution by the United Nations Security Council. So the question is, what the heck is going on? Why is the UN so powerless? Can we just forget about the UN? Is the UN completely irrelevant as far as the Palestinian issue is concerned? What's your comment?
Well, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. The UN was designed actually in order to maintain and preserve the interests of the superpowers. So it would be naive on the part of anyone in the world to think that the UN could come to their rescue or would serve them justice. Whatever the General Assembly, for instance, decides has no value whatsoever, because eventually it is the Security Council that matters, and the Security Council can be or under the control of 5 permanent states. Any of these member states can veto any resolution, and that's the end of the story. As far as we are concerned, Palestinians, the UN was party to our Nakba, because the UN recognized the creation of the Zionist state on our land. The United Nations has done very little to help the Palestinians and alleviate their suffering. Even UNRWA, which was set up in order to provide the refugees with assistance and with aid, is subject to control by the donor countries. And these donor countries, most of them come under the control of the United States of America. The real problem here is that the world order is controlled by a thuggish state, and that is the United States of America. Our real problem in modern times is with the United States of America. It has so much power, so much influence, so much leverage, and it uses all of this in order to suppress people, in order to advance its own interests around the world at the expense of all the values that the Americans and their European allies in the world's democracies claim to believe in or to uphold.
Okay, but Alhamdulillah, we are now witnessing that students at university campuses all over the US, they are protesting, setting up camps, encampments, trying to force their universities to divest from firms that are complicit in helping Israel, and it's spreading very fast all around the US in many universities. Do you think that this trend is going to change the American policies in the future, and therefore will also change what's going to happen at the United Nations? Any hope there?
I'm really hopeful, and I must first salute these students, really brave students who are now being persecuted by the American police forces in all the campuses where they are exercising their basic right of demonstrating peacefully, of expressing their belief, expressing their opinion. I think for those of us who have witnessed in the past what happened in the 60s and onwards, and the contribution of the student movement to the change of world position on Vietnam initially, and then on South Africa. Yes, I am very optimistic. I'm optimistic that these students will indeed, through their struggle, change the course of history. I remember, for instance, as a young student in Britain, when we used to see students demonstrating in front of the South African embassy in Trafalgar Square. And there were few of them in the beginning, but then the movement grew up in number. And some of those students later on became actually ministers in the British government. And I remember I had a discussion with Peter Hain, who was one of those students. And when he invited us to his office in London, I said to him, I remember you from the student days when you were active in supporting the cause of the South African people and their struggle for justice and the end of apartheid. Why are you not doing the same thing regarding Palestine today? And he smiled, he laughed, and he said, "Oh, you've really asked about something that is very difficult to answer now." So he knew. I mean, they had it within themselves. They knew the similarities between the two struggles. But I think what Gaza has done today is that it has revived the Palestinian issue in a manner that we haven't seen before at the global level. Not only in terms of sympathy and support for the Palestinians, but more importantly, in terms of going back to history to understand how all of this happened. And as part of that process, the hypocrisy of liberal democracies is being exposed. And these young men and women who are today exercising their basic human rights in America, and for which they are being punished, have been awakened from what was known as the American dream into the American nightmare. It's a nightmare because this is America that claims to support liberties, that claims to be democratic, and yet it is supporting one of the most vicious fascist regimes in the history of humanity. And so we are seeing a global uprising, actually, not just in support of Palestine, but in support of changing the current world order, which has proven to be a very unjust, a very oppressive world order.
Yeah, and to see the police in the U.S. brutally suppressing the protests and beating the protesters, I sent a message to an American friend. I hope you stay safe. I think I'm worried about you. And the person said that, yeah, this is very scary now. So it's very strange to say to an American, I'm worried for you. And this is in America, which is supposed to be a country that protects human rights. It's very strange, but hopefully, as you said,
the amazing thing is that some of the scenes we receive through the social media from America are very similar to the scenes we used to receive from Tahrir Square in Egypt.
Oh, yeah.
Today I saw a clip of students standing in a line protecting their Muslim friends as they were performing salat, they were performing their prayers, from the brutality of the troops. And this is exactly what happened in Tahrir Square. When the Christian demonstrators stood in a line to protect Muslim worshippers during Salat. And now we see Jewish, Christian, and other students or students from other denominations actually doing the same thing. America today is very reminiscent of the Mubarak regime in Egypt. America today is ruled by a government that is as despotic, as brutal, as inhumane as the Arab regimes against whom the Arab Spring started. So this is the American Spring, probably.
Yeah, yes. Very interesting indeed. Okay, let's go back to the Middle East now. What about the Arab countries and the OIC? Why are they completely powerless? Can you please explain to because some people are asking why are the Arab countries not doing anything at all with regard to the Palestinians?
Because these countries were created and designed in order to prolong the interests of former colonizers in the region. They were not designed to protect human rights or to promote democracy or to be transparent or to be upholders of the rule of law. None of this. It doesn't apply to them. These regimes, in the majority, of course, majority of these regimes, if not all, are vulnerable, they are weak, they don't derive their legitimacy from the people, they derive their empowerment from foreign powers. So they are actually agents of those foreign powers. And we saw this recently when Iran responded to the Israeli attack on the Iranian consulate in Damascus. Arab countries collaborated with the United States of America, Britain, and France in order to protect Israel, which could not protect itself.
Yeah,
The country I'm talking to you from now, at the moment,
yeah.
the regime here is proud of having foiled or having contributed to foiling the Iranian revenge attack on Israel. And this is the nature of these regimes. And I think the Arab masses about 13 years ago realized this, and that's why they took to the streets and they wanted to change the situation. And there were the slogans in the streets of most of the Arab capitals were, the people want to bring down the regime, the people want to liberate Palestine. They could very clearly see, and this has been proven like never before during these moments that we are living, that there is a direct link between the existence of Zionism in Palestine and the existence of these regimes. It is these regimes that protect Israel and empower it and enable it to continue to occupy our land.
So, in other words, if we want to have a optimistic vision of what's going to happen to Palestine in the coming years, we probably have to be looking to America. We are more optimistic of changes coming from America rather than from the Arab countries, right?
Well, we want to see changes to the world order, because the world order, which is led by America, or this so-called international community, because whenever the term international community is mentioned, that means those in charge, and those in charge are the Americans. We look forward to seeing a change in the structure and mechanism of this world order, because it is holding everything together. And the amazing thing is that it is tiny Gaza that is challenging this world order, and that is fueling this uprising that is aspiring for this change.
Yeah, yeah. But the point is, we are witnessing uprisings in America. We are seeing a lot of changes going on, and we probably see it's not going to stop the students' movement. And as you said, if the trend is going to be like what happened during the 70s, 80s, and which led to the end of the Vietnam War. So if that's going to be the trend in America, then America will be a very important factor that would make not only the world order but also to liberate Palestine. So that's very going to be very interesting. But okay,
Please,
let's
please,
yeah.
please.
But you mentioned about Iran just now, and how the Arab countries tried to protect Israel from Iranian attacks. So Iran seems to be very committed to the Palestinian cause, but here in Malaysia and some other countries too, I think from what I read is that some Muslims are scared of the specter of or the future where Iran becomes very powerful and very influential in the region, because they say that it just Iran is ruled by Shia, and they are also helping the Syrian regime. And some people don't want to be involved, or very suspicious of the motive of Iranian involvement in the Palestinian issue. Some don't even want to participate in the Al Quds Day in Ramadan recently, because that day was started by Ayatollah Khomeini and promoted by Iran. So, what is your comment? Is there any basis for being worried about Iran with regard to the Palestinian cause, simply because they are of the Shia uh, group? Any comment on that?
Well, Iran is part of the region that is called the Middle East. It's for a very long time, it's been part of this region, and it's not going anywhere. And Iran is a neighbor, is considered to be a Muslim country, is a member of the OIC. And Iran is today the most supportive country in terms of aid, military support, as well as logistical support for the Palestinians. That cannot be denied. You can have disagreements with Iran on other issues if you wish to, but when we talk about Palestine, we have to be fair. Iran on Palestine is supportive. Yet the recent revenge attack on Israel, or attempted attack on Israel, wasn't really because of Gaza. It wasn't a response. It wasn't in response to what the Israelis are doing in Gaza. And this is where many people are analyzing what happened emotionally rather than politically. Iran was attacked because an attack on a consulate or on an embassy anywhere in the world, and this is in international law, this is an international convention, is considered to be an attack on the territory of that country. Iran was attacked, and therefore it had every right in international law to respond, since the United Nations did not come to its support. They were waiting for a Security Council resolution to condemn the Israeli attack on Damascus. It never came, and the Iranians eventually had to do this. Now, many people, when it comes to Iran, come to conclusions based on love or hate, on dislike or like. And this is not how one should understand politics. We have to understand politics on the basis of a thorough study of the situation, of the context. There is a context to things that are happening. And there is a context even to the so-called Sunni Shiite hostility or crisis. How come that countries like Iraq, countries like Lebanon, countries like some of the Gulf countries where there are sizable Shiite communities didn't have problems until the Iranian Revolution erupted? We need to go back to history and understand the context. The context is that Iran, before the Iranian Revolution, was ruled by a man who was known as the American policeman in the region. Iran had the strongest links to Zionism. Iran supplied the Zionists with oil. Iran was ruled by a regime that was on great terms with many Arab countries, including Egypt during Sadat time, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, all these Gulf monarchies, they were on excellent terms with Iran, and nobody complained. Yet when the Iranian Revolution happened, the Gulf countries, especially Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, and the UAE, maybe less the UAE at the time, but Kuwait and Saudi Arabia, incited Saddam Hussein and supplied him with billions of dollars, together with the Americans and Western Europe, in order to fight Iran and abort the revolution in its early days. So actually, it was the Arabs who started this. It wasn't the Iranians. I mean, I'm not saying this because I like or dislike, because I love or I hate. These are facts of history. People need to go back and read. So that's why when the Americans invaded Iraq, the Iranians were happy. To hell with Saddam Hussein, they said, because Saddam Hussein caused millions of deaths in Iran as well as in Iraq because of his stupid adventure. Now, when it comes to Palestine, since the Iranian revolution started, there has not been a single country in the region that supported the Palestinians the way the Iranians supported them. Yes, as a state, Iran has ambitions. It has aspirations. Every state in the world does this. That's by nature, by definition. If you want to blame Iran for anything, you should blame the Arabs, because it's the Arabs who align themselves with the Americans and align themselves with the Israelis. I mean, many of them, not all of them. I'm talking about governments here, not the peoples. And therefore created a vacuum in the region that the Iranians found convenient to fill. The Iranians are filling a vacuum that is the product of the absence of the Arabs. And why doesn't Saudi Arabia and the UAE and Kuwait and all these Arab rich countries, why don't they support the Palestinians? Why are they making all these distortions about Hamas, accusing it of all sorts of nonsense? Why are they imprisoning Palestinian activists, even their own citizens who are active in support of Palestine? Why are they incriminating anybody who donates money to Palestine? If they are really afraid, they are worried about an Iranian influence, why don't they themselves rush to the aid of what they used to call the Arabs' primary cause? And a word to the Muslims as well, Muslims in Malaysia and elsewhere. Okay, if you don't like to take part in Al-Quds Day, why don't you have your own Quds Day then? Why belittle someone who is trying to do something while you are not doing anything? So rather than just criticize the Iranians, let's look inwards and see where we have been lacking, where we have not been fulfilling our own responsibilities regarding Palestine and regarding other issues. So I understand the Iranians have interests, have ambitions. During the Arab Spring, they were terrified because the Arab Spring wasn't in their favor. So they supported the Syrian regime because the loss of the Syrian regime meant the loss of a strategic ally. Yes, that's true. And I was opposed to Iran in this, and I criticized Iran because I supported the Syrian popular revolution. But let's not confuse things together. Iran acted then wrongly as a state, believing it was protecting its interests. But on Palestine, Iran never changed course. And we cannot deny that all the technology, warfare technology, much of the warfare technology that the Palestinians have today is actually Iranian. And what did the Arabs give to the Palestinians? Nothing. They only collaborate with the Israelis and with the Americans. They collaborate with the enemies of the Ummah, and giving as such an opportunity to Iran to emerge as the hero, as the champion of Islamic causes. Who is to blame here?
Okay, thank you. Some food for thoughts for people over here who are still suspicious of Iran. So the thing is, there are priorities to be pursued here, right? The priority is the Palestinian struggle, and since Iran is
Well,
historically, yeah,
I'm not suggesting that you don't need to be suspicious of any country. It's up to you. You can be suspicious of any government because governments have their own designs, have their own plans, but we need to be fair, just like the Quran tells us. ولا يجرمنكم شنآن قوم على ألا تعدلوا اعدلوا هو أقرب للتقوى. Do not let your dislike of a certain people swerve you from being fair. Be fair. This is closer to piety. So if there are things you don't like about Iran, okay, you can tell us about them, but don't say things that are not true when it comes to Iran or when it comes to anybody else in the world. Even when it comes to the Israelis, even when it comes to the Americans, truth are truths, lies are lies, and we need to really, especially Muslims, need to check their sources, check the information, educate themselves, so that they don't arrive at the wrong or erroneous conclusion.
great, thank you. I want to go to Turkey now. We know that President Erdogan, he always gives speeches saying he strongly support the Palestinian cause. Even recently, he invited Ismail Haniya to come to Istanbul and gave him another strong support. Mentioned about the strong support of Turkey to the Palestinian struggle. But we also know that Turkey continues to maintain diplomatic and trade relations with Israel. In fact, just before the October 7 operation by Hamas, Turkey was trying to improve trade relations with Israel.
Mm-hmm.
And the diplomatic relation is still maintained. And some people say that there's evidence to show that there are food being supplied from Turkey to Israel as well. So the question is Turkey a reliable friend of the Palestinian people?
Well, look, at the personal level, I know President Erdogan, and I know that he is an honest man, he's sincere, and whatever he said about Palestine, he believes in it. But I think he failed the test during this period of time, a very crucial period of time. Because of changes in the region, and because Turkey wanted to open up to former foes in the region, those even who conspired against it, like the UAE, Saudi Arabia, etc. And because they were trying to end all conflicts with their neighbors, and also because they are members of NATO, I think with the passage of time, Erdogan surrounded himself by a group of pragmatists, extreme pragmatists, to the extent that principles and values not only became secondary, they probably became bottom of the list for them. And we were observing, I've been observing what these changes. By the way, since Turkey reconciled with Saudi Arabia and dropped the case of Jamal Khashoggi, rahimahullah, my dear friend, Jamal Khashoggi.
Yeah.
This was a murder that is proven to be a murder. They had all the evidence to indict the Saudis, and then they decided to drop the case because that was the price for Saudi investments. Since then, I've been observing with utmost concern where Turkey was heading. And then came the 7th of October, and that was a major failure of this administration in Turkey, I regret. Only when Ismail Haniya lost all his family nearly, his sons, his grandchildren, and And when 6 months passed with this continuing onslaught on the helpless people of Gaza, the Turks seem to have regained a little bit of conscience. And then they started to ban, they produced a list of products they were not exporting anymore to Israel. Yet, throughout the earlier 6 months, they provided Israel with food, with drinks, with gas, with even spare parts, probably weapons as well, we don't know. And really, many people, many of the people around the world, many of the Muslims around the world who admired Erdogan so much, were extremely disappointed with him. Now, they seem now to try and compensate, but I think it's too little too late from Turkey. Erdogan had a historic opportunity because he wasn't going to stand for power anymore. This was his last term. And if it is your last term, you don't worry about whether you are going to be elected or not, whether you're going to be re-elected or not. He did not seize that opportunity. He was the beloved of the Muslim masses, and I think he lost much of that. Not only that, he lost many of his own constituents. And I think the big mistake that Erdogan and his entourage committed is that they wanted to win over some of the Turkish nationalists and racists at the expense of principles and values. And you should never do that. There are things you should never compromise. And unfortunately, racism has been on the rise in Turkey. Many Arabs are having very difficult times, including tourists, by the way, because there's been an attempt to win over part of the constituency that usually supports the nationalists and the racists in Turkey. It didn't work. They didn't win these people over, and they lost many of their own supporters. So there should be really a lesson in this for them as well as for Muslim politicians elsewhere in the world.
Okay. All right. I forgot to ask just now. We were talking about Arab countries. I remember Jordan airdropped some food packages to people in Gaza, and
they killed them.
And some Muslims here in many countries were excited. They were really admiring Jordan and said this is a good trend. What was it all about? It was just an act, wasn't it?
It was ridiculous. It was most ridiculous. The Americans did airdrops. The Egyptians did airdrops. The Egyptians who are closing the Rafah crossing and not allowing things to come through from their borders used the airdrops. The Americans, the Jordanians, and the Egyptians. Many people lost their lives drowning in the sea because the airdrops ended up in the water. Some people died because the parachutes did not open, and these aid. It's stupid. It's ridiculous. If you really want to aid the people of Gaza, just pressure Israel. You know something? Jordan, Egypt, and Turkey could have prevented this war from day number one. Could have ended that war during the early days of the war if they threatened to sever ties with Israel, and if they did not supply Israel with essentials it needed in order to undermine what the Yemenis were doing at Bab al-Mandab at the entry to the Red Sea. Actually, it's just crazy. They empower Israel, they protect Israel, and then they put on this show of airdrops. Ridiculous. No, nobody believes them. Nobody buys this. But of course, for the people of Gaza who are desperate, wherever food comes from, they rush for it because there's starvation going on. Famine is going on in Gaza at the moment.
Yeah, just said that some Muslims are so easily tricked by theatrics, by basically theatrics, right? Okay. Now, recently, the United States vetoed the attempt request by Palestinian Authority to be given the status of a state, right, and as a member, fully fledged member of United Nations, vetoed by the U.S., which again prove that the U.S. cannot be relied upon, which we all know anyway. But the issue which some people are confused about is you are asking for a state, and this implies sort of a state, Palestine, and also at the same time recognize Israel as a state, like a two-state solution. That if you have a state, then the implication is that in the future, the refugees will go to that state. So you are asking for a state. By implication, then you are recognizing Israel, and the refugees will go there, and therefore you are going to sacrifice the right of return of the Palestinian refugees. So, how should we read this? This attempt to have a state for the Palestinian, is it the priority of the Palestinian struggle to be granted a state status at the United Nations, or is it a distraction?
It is a distraction. It is. See, commentators around the world now are saying no more two-state solution. Even those who at one stage believed in it are no longer believing in it. I heard this from scholars like Avi Shleim. I heard it from activists, Jewish as well as Muslim, as Christian or whatever, even some non-believing activists, that the two-state solution is a mirage. Zionism, if ever it were to allow a Palestinian entity to be created next to it, it will be an extension of the current political Palestinian Authority in Ramallah, a security organ for Israel, for the occupation. And I really want to talk to people who have a little bit of confusion about this, by asking them to ask themselves the following question: what is the problem in Palestine? Why do we have a problem? Is it because the Palestinians don't have a state? Well, the Palestinians never had a state in their history. It's not that we had a state and we lost it and we want it back. No. We lost our homeland. We lost our houses. We lost our land. We lost our living. That's what we want back. We lost our freedom. We lost our dignity. We struggle against an invasion, a colonial invasion. The two-state solution was a proposal intended initially to prolong Zionism in this part of the world, to maintain the state that was created by the Europeans in order to solve their own Jewish problem, an answer to their own anti-Semitism, which had nothing to do with the Muslims or with the Arabs. We are now in a situation that is really very similar to the struggle against apartheid in South Africa in the 70s and the 80s, before we entered into the 90s, and that was the end of apartheid. The apartheid authorities, who were supported by the Americans and the Europeans, especially by Britain, were offering as a solution the creation of Bantustans, something similar to the two-state solution in Palestine. Okay, we give you a state here, and then you listen to us and you do what we tell you, and you participate in the maintenance of tranquility and peace by helping us step more on the heads and the bodies of the majority of the inhabitants of this country. The clarity of vision on the parts of the leaders of the struggle against apartheid in South Africa prevented this from happening. When they went to Nelson Mandela and said, okay, come on, Nelson, let's end this together. We want to start anew, start fresh. He said to them, yes, we can start fresh, but without apartheid. This is the problem. It is the same problem in Palestine. It's Zionism. You cannot coexist with Zionism. And it is really a glad tiding that today we see around the world young Jewish men and women who are turning against Zionism and who are saying that the Jews need to be liberated from Zionism, because Zionism is the enemy of the Jews in as much as it is the enemy of the Muslims or the Christians or anybody else. It's fascist, it's racist, it's colonial. So this is the problem. And that's why the sin committed by Yasser Arafat and the PLO is that they agreed to recognize Zionism. They provided Zionism with legitimacy. And we saw the countries of the world, country after country, including India, China, and many Arab countries, saying we cannot be more Palestinian than the Palestinians. So if the Palestinians accept Israel in exchange for a state of their own, why should we not accept Israel? And Israel made the biggest ever profit out of the decision by Yasser Arafat to recognize the legitimacy of Zionism. That's a big mistake. That's a sin. That's the biggest of all sins. Our problem in Palestine is Zionism. When Zionism is no more, we say, come, let's talk about the details. Let's talk about the future. We can live together according to a fair and just arrangement, but not with Zionism around.
Okay. So you were very clear just now, the enemy is Zionism. And for Malaysian viewers in particular, this has got to be further clarified, because in a couple of days there will be a protest, and I know the groups that are responsible for this may have speakers talking about what is happening in Palestine is already proven in the Quran, that the Jews will always be the enemy of the Muslims, that we have to fight the Jews, etc., etc. But you are saying, no, we are talking about the Jews are rising up, trying to be liberated from Zionism. So many Muslim Malaysian viewers now are watching this. Please clarify: is this a fight against the Jews or not? As a in Palestine,
the position you've just described to me just shows the lack of knowledge about history and about reality. Until the beginning of the Second World War in 1939, Muslims across the Muslim world had no problem with the Jews. And the Jews had been living there for more than a century. Sorry, for centuries, more than a millennium, for 14, 15 centuries. How come that we were not in conflict with the Jews until the 20th century? How come? Why? What happened? All the previous generations did not understand the Quran. These people who are organizing this rally that you're talking about understand the Quran better than everybody else that preceded us. The Jews and the Christians are the people of the book. They are Ahlul Dhimma. They have rights. They have to be protected, not only respected, but also protected, so long as they don't initiate aggression. The problem in Palestine is not a Jewish problem. It's not a problem between the Muslims and the Jews. This is a European colonial invasion in the name of Judaism. And that's why at the turn of the 20th century, when the Zionist movement was picking up, the majority of the elders of the Jews around the world were opposed to Zionism. I regret to say that Muslim minds have been infected by misleading information. Many of them read the fake document called the Protocols of the Elders of Zion, which is so un-Jewish. It's not Jewish. It was never written by a Jew. It was written by someone who is loyal to the aristocracy in Russia and to the Orthodox Church there, in order to justify the pogroms against the Jews. Imagine. And then some Muslims and I regret to say I saw this in some of the writings of some prominent figures in the Muslim world during the 20th century. They resort to this document in order to prove that the hostility and the enmity between the Jews has been going on since time memorial, which is totally inaccurate, totally wrong. So I would urge the brothers and the sisters in Malaysia to read one of the most recent publications that are really worth reading, and I hope that this can be translated into Malay. It's already being translated into Arabic now. Are the memoirs of Avi Shlaim. He has just published his memoirs under the title Three Worlds: Memoirs of an Arab Jew, that shows how the Jews of Iraq, who are the most ancient Jewish community on the face of the earth, coexisted peacefully for 15 centuries with the Muslims in Iraq. No problem at all until Zionism started. The European Zionists, who were atheists and who were condemned by the rabbis of Europe until the early 30s of the last century, are the ones who tried to instigate hatred and hostility between the Muslims and the Jews across the Arab world. And this is what Avi Shlaim proves and documents in his memoirs.
Okay, thank you. I hope that should be clear enough for Malaysian Muslims to.
Not only that, let them look at the Jews of America today. These young students on campus, many of them are Jewish. If it is a Jewish issue, why are they then standing against Israel? Why are they dissociating themselves from Israel?
Yes. This is more than enough to show to people that, because the Jews are now at the forefront of the struggle against Israel in America itself. So that's something to bear in mind. Okay, we have only less than 10 minutes left. Recently, somebody told me that WhatsApp group discussion in Malaysia, there was a Palestinian inside there, and he said, if you want to condemn America, good enough. He said, but you must also condemn Hamas, because Hamas is the one who brought all these calamities to the people of Palestine, especially in Gaza now. So Gaza, 34,000 people have died, demolished, etc., etc. He said, and this Palestinian guy said, you must also condemn Hamas. He's asking Malaysians to do that. Otherwise, you are not being fair, he said. This is the Palestinians. Can you please clarify to us this matter?
Well, this is not unprecedented. During the time of Uhud, the hypocrites in Medina said the same thing about the Prophet ﷺ and about his companions. There are people who want to blame the victims. We, the Palestinians, we lost our land and homes more than 75 years ago. And throughout those 75 years, our people in Gaza and in the West Bank and even in the 1948 Palestine have been enduring so much persecution, apartheid and racism. So what do you do about all of this? You just accept it, you live with it, or you struggle against it. To us, there is no loss in martyrdom. Martyrdom is again because there is another world, there is another life. So rather than live as a slave in this world, you struggle with your life in order to live as a free person or die and go to paradise. This is part of our creed. And there are some Palestinians like the guy you're referring to. Unfortunately, I don't know who he is. I don't know his background, but they don't have this understanding of the concept of jihad, of the concept of sacrifice, of the concept of living in dignity, in karama. They probably prefer to just live and let live no matter what, even if you live as a slave. No, you don't live as a slave. And rejecting slavery is not just a Muslim thing, it's a human thing. By natural human instinct, we long for freedom as human beings. And that's why people around the world and throughout history struggle for freedom, struggle for dignity. But if you are a Muslim, you have even a stronger motivation to do this, because Allah wants you to be only of a servant of Him, a slave of Him, another slave of Zionism, or the slave of dictatorship, or the slave or the slave of a certain corrupt elite here or there.
Okay, thank you very much for that comment again. Um, Obviously, as I said, it depends. We have to study the background of people who talk about this. Where do they come from? What kind of vision they have for life? Well, for them, I suppose to be safe from harm in Gaza is more important than to liberate Gaza. I think that is the
But
motivation behind.
if I may just add a few words before the time is up.
Yeah.
And these people don't appreciate what the 7th of October was about. The 7th of October was about a turning point in history. And that's why some prominent writers in America likened it to the Tet Offensive in Vietnam in 1968, which changed the course of history for the Vietnamese cause. The 7th of October is changing the course of history for the Palestinian struggle. And inshallah, Palestine will soon be free from the river to the sea.
Inshallah. Thank you very much. That's a very nice way of ending our conversation tonight. It's always enjoyable to talk to you, Dr. Azam. Thank you very much again for accepting our invitation. Hopefully, inshallah, we will have more discussion in the future under better circumstances. We can see that the trends are really positive now for the struggle for Palestine, for liberation of Palestine. Even in the heart of America itself, we are seeing changes. We are seeing millions of Americans now supporting the Palestinian cause, inshallah ta'ala. Thank you very much again. And thank you very much.
Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.